Hey, everybody. Welcome to Brand Talk, another way to talk. My name is Dr. John Tantillo, affectionately called JT. And this is the place where we talk about brands. We talk about your brand. We talk about brands that are in the news. We talk about corporate brands. And we talk about brands that you use and you love every day. And today we have a very, very special guest. Not only is he a dear friend of mine, he's somebody that you can learn from. And his name is George Bugatti. And without any further ado, before I do that, before I bring in George, I just want to say that you should be telling your friends that we're going to be on Fridays, every Friday, because Monday through Thursday, I am teaching the youth of America. So I can't find any time to do this other than on Fridays right now. But Fridays, and I'm thinking that 3 o'clock would be a perfect time so we can get traction from both the West Coast as well as the East Coast. So that's what we're going to do. And please tell your friends about this new way, or another way, I should say, to talk, which is Brand Talk. And without any further ado, I am going to introduce to you not only a dear friend, but what I would call a grand brand. And when I mention his background, or when we delve into his background, even better yet, you'll see exactly what I mean. And so now, without any further ado, I bring you George Bugatti. Hello, George. How are you, buddy?
Where's my entrance music?
We gotta we gotta talk to Julian about that.
You know what
poor Julian.
Piano here next time.
Yeah, what's that?
I can play myself on and play myself off.
Oh yeah, that's the next time.
Yeah,
that's the next time.
Hi, John.
So, so the first thing I want to say is, we've only known each other probably about maybe. I'm going to be very liberal. 2 years. I don't even think it's 2 years, but I feel we've known each other like for 30. I mean, it's that kind of a relationship.
Is that a compliment?
I think so. Okay. I think so. And we finish each other's sentences, and we have a lot of fun. And the person that brought us together is Willie Rizzo, and he was the guy. And then the person who complimented is Bernie Fersham, because you were doing you were collaborating with him, or you did something with him.
Yeah,
it was something.
At the time, I was working with Marty Allen, God rest his soul, and his lovely wife Karen, who I still work with on the Arlen show, and we were going to do a show at Bernie's place, the Metropolitan Room, and then Bernie saw the wisdom in not being a club owner anymore.
Yeah, tell me about it. Sure.
No, it's a rough racket. No,
it is a rough racket.
He was actually one of the more successful people. That room was very famous. A lot of famous people went through there. I never got the chance to work it, but I know a lot of people who did. But yeah, that's how you and I kind of met. And then we ended up knowing a lot of the same people.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it's so funny. The show is called Brand Talk, another way to talk. And you can see us every Friday at 3 o'clock. But you illustrated to me last night, once the promotion went out, that you didn't like the way. I shouldn't say it that way. You had some reservations about the way we positioned you in marketing. We call it position, and
All
we said we said that you were a Las Vegas entertainer, and you suggested, and then you didn't suggest. But this is brand talk. This is where you should suggest.
You're right.
All right. And you said something like, well, most entertainers don't want to be labeled simply Vegas entertainers. They want to be entertainers. Okay. Well, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know what you're talking about. No.
Hey, see, this is what I got to put up with. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought this up. It's something that we rarely talk about on the exterior, but on the inside in the industry, agent will always tell you, even though I happen to live here now, and I've lived here and I love this city and it's been really great for me. When I first moved here, I opened Bellagio. I was one of 3 acts. It was Michael Feinstein, John Pizzarelli, and myself. There were
name dropper.
No. They were the big headliners, and I was just an opening act. And I managed to stay there for 2 years. And I had a wonderful manager, agent at the time. And, he said, George, be careful, because if you brand yourself as a Vegas act, that has some connotation with it. Not that it's good, bad, or indifferent, but it has it may limit you, because Vegas is usually thought of as a big pomp and circumstance kind of a thing. You have feathers on stage and showgirls and things like that. And he said, that's not your act. You're a jazz singer. You're a jazz artist. So it's not congruent for me specifically with what I'm doing. And also as a producer, for a producer, I guess I could be known as a Las Vegas producer. I am, because I produce shows here very proudly. I produced Tony Bennett's daughter, in a show we did at the fabulous Smith Center here, and my good buddy John O'Hurley, who I think you know.
Yes, I love him.
Love him.
Seinfeld.
And we did a show together here. So from the production point of view, not so much. But for me specifically, as a jazz singer, pianist, I perform all over the country, in addition to Las Vegas. So that was the distinction I was trying to make.
Yeah. Well, what you did by that is that now, from this time forward, this kind of a hiccup will not ever happen, because before we do any promotion, the principal who's being talked about has to okay the promotional material before I see it, because I did not pick it up. But as soon as I did pick it up, I made the change. But let's talk a little bit about how you got into shoe business, a really big shoe. How did you get into show? Was it really at 5 years old you left your mother at Macy's and went to the piano section and had everybody on all
lost,
points bulletin?
They found me in the piano
department. Go ahead. I'm probably stepping on it.
Like any kid, you see a piano. A lot of kids, you just go to it. But my dad said, maybe we should give him lessons. So they got me lessons, and I loved it. I never stopped. But it's funny, you don't think about going into show business when you're learning an instrument. You think about mastering the instrument. You have the love of the instrument and the love of the tunes that you're playing. And so, that's how I started artistically.
Right.
Later on, you start to become savvy, either through teaching or through self-realization that you need to do, that it is a business, and you need to treat it as such, which now that you brought up that brand thing, and I'm thinking about the feathers in my act, that could help. Feathers.
Right. See, this is you try to be serious, you try to make a point, and then he goes for the cheap joke. but that's why we love you. That's why Bugatti is the Bugatti factor. But anyway, you're listening to George Bugatti and John Tantillo on BrandTalkk, Another Way to Talk. And it's the only show that is on the internet where we only talk about brands. And we're talking about a great brand right now, and his name is George Bugatti. So you started with the piano, okay, and then of course you were one of these people, okay, that was so talented that you went to the High School of Performing Arts, a la Fame. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
That was I'm not so sure. When I went to a parochial elementary school in Brooklyn, and so when I was done with 8th grade, it was coming up for high school. There are your choices of high schools, and it was more like, even though I love this, I'm not sure about it, but it was what I was fairly good at. And someone has suggested the High School Performing Arts. Why not audition? So I auditioned, and I was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of my life to be there and to be judged, and by a panel, and then they tell you afterwards, well, 5,000 kids a year get audition, and they only pick 150, because the school was at the time was very small. Now it's joined with music and art, and I think they have a couple of thousand students, but at the time, or more, at the time there were only, I think, 600 or 800 students in all 4 years. And they only picked 150 a year, 150 to 200 a year.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough. I was accepted, and that really changed my life. I think about that place almost every day.
Wow. Well, what I admire about you, and what we're trying to do on this show, is to give people who, and young folks especially, motivation not to just do it. See, when I was younger, I was a roly-poly. I was overweight, and I did not have confidence. I could never, ever, ever been a performer because of the auditions. However, I would have loved to have done that. I would have loved to have, but I didn't have the confidence. And so I think it's a testament to you and even your parents. I mean, see, with my parents, my mother told me when I asked her to go play, I wanted to learn how to play the piano. She said no. I was the only 5-year-old kid that wanted to play the piano, learn to play the piano. And she said no to me. And the tenant had a stand-up piano that they wanted to give to us, and she still said no. My sister always excuses my mother. I will never excuse my mother. Go ahead. Anyway, George, you're not going to say anything, huh?
Yeah. I'm thinking, I don't think she did it out of any. I mean, I didn't know your mother, but I can't think of any mother not wanting what's best for her children. And it's a rough life.
Yes,
it's a rough life.
Right.
I'm very fortunate that I've made a living from it all these years. And it's been up and down and all around. I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, there might be some things that I would do differently, but if someone doesn't come from that, were your parents musical, or were they?
No. See,
unless you have some guidance and some direction and some connections, it's going to take you a lot longer. I mean, I floundered for a lot of years due to something else, because I had a little interruption and a change of career that you and I talked about briefly last night. But it's no bowl of cherries, and maybe she knew that. Maybe she knew that. Maybe she didn't give you the reason why at that point, but it's very possible that she did.
We're speaking with George Bugatti, a legend in the
My
musical
own mind.
field. No, 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 no. He's a wonderful pianist and somebody anytime I'm in Las Vegas, I go to the see him play at the Bootlegger, a great, great, great restaurant, open 24 hours. Yes, I mean it, 24 hours. And it's just the American songbook he sings. And, I'm affiliated indirectly with the cabaret convention. So, I mean, I know the American songbook left, right, and forward. I'm dear friends with KT Sullivan, the executive director of the Mabel Mercer Foundation that does that sponsors the cabaret convention, and boy, that's one heck of a ticket to get. So anyway, so you go to and so then what happens after performing arts? You go, Mr. Weisenheimer, Mr. Talent. You go to Juilliard, the Harvard of entertainment study. Tell us a little bit about that.
For a short while, a very short while, because before I even got started, I stopped. I was asked to leave through the back door. No, I had a little injury. I don't have much experience at Juilliard because literally within a few months of being there, I had an injury to my right hand. I severed what's called the median nerve quite accidentally, and I had microsurgery in the embryonic stages of microsurgery. The way the doctor explained it to me, he said the nerve is like a telephone cable. We can repair that, but within the telephone cable, there are thousands of little filaments, and we don't do that. And it's up to God how those things realize. And so it basically put an end to my classical career. And cut to the chase, I found other things that I wanted to do in music and in show business. But so my Juilliard moment was literally a blip.
Yeah. Here we go. A takeaway is that what you did not do is you did not quit. Okay. And what you did and now if you're making a living by music. I mean, that's great. And what you did is after Juilliard, you didn't do chopped liver. You went to NYU. My God. And what did you do at NYU?
I saw theater. And at the time, I don't know what they have now. At the time, if you wanted to study theater, because there was this girl I was seeing, and she was studying with Stella.
It's always a girl.
It's
always a girl.
And I thought, can I tell you something? I should
go ahead. Tell me.
No. It's a family show. She was my reason.
Don't be so sure. Go ahead.
She was my reason for going to. We'll do the after hours thing,
Yes.
She was my reason for applying and for going there. At the time, you could study with Circle in the Square, Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler. There might have been one other.
Wow.
And then you still have your conventional studies as well. But I went to study with Stella, and in those days she was still teaching, and I actually got to study with her directly. She wouldn't come in every single day, but it was if I remember, a couple times a week. You get to actually work with her, and I'll never forget her. When she walked in, everyone was required to stand up and say "Good morning, Miss Adler."
I love it.
And she had a bow around her neck. And she always said, never wear jeans to an audition. Everybody wears jeans.
I love it.
Put yourself ahead of the pack. Differentiate yourself. Anyway, I could get into the minutia, but NYU was spectacular for me because it gave me another avenue within music and theater that I could explore. I thought for a while that I wanted to be an actor, but I didn't. I always came back to music. So what I did from that is all the time I was rehabilitating my hand. Even though they said I wouldn't play again, I kept working.
Wow.
Working at it and working at it. And even though I've lost some facility and I don't have any feeling in my right hand anymore.
Don't bite.
I don't. But the way the median nerve works is it supplies movement and feeling to this part of the hand, but not the pinky. So I use my pinky as a rudder. And and I know that if that's C, well, that must be B flat, so on and so forth. and so I started accompanying myself and tried singing. And I'll never forget the first time I tried singing at home. My parents actually said, "George, no, that's not going to work." I was bad. You know, I was really bad. Some people have said that recently. That's not going to work.
No, they haven't. But go ahead. Now cut that out.
But I started working. I was lucky enough to get a job after college. I might have been the end of college last year at piano bars in New York, and I worked a few of the famous ones where people would gather around and I would play and they would sing. We go through the different Broadway shows, 3 or 4 songs in each show, and then move on. Except Cats, that only had one song. Zing.
Bada bing.
One recognizable song. And all the while I was singing along with these people, and that's eventually what I did was accompany myself and sing for the last 25 years.
Yes.
Well, before I started producing shows, but that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems that you made the full circle because you went back to the stage, maybe not necessarily as an actor, but what you did is you wrote this very, very compelling play about Richard Nixon. That and the premise is what would have happened if Richard Nixon hadn't resigned and would have fought it out in court. What would have happened? I mean, I'd like you to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, John. Well, if I could for a minute, I wouldn't have done it if it weren't for you because
stop. I wasn't searching for that. I'm just so proud. This is going to be a mutual admiration society. This guy really, I'm not a writer. I don't know. And then he writes this thing, but go ahead. Sorry for.
I've been writing all along. I've been writing little shows. I've been writing. I did the Harold Arlen show.
Excellent. We'll talk about that too.
I did another one called Port. I've been writing shows that basically musical reviews, but dialogue. And I had taken writing classes in New York for a couple of years. And I've also had a very strange fascination with, as many people do, with presidents, but one president specifically, Richard Nixon. I don't know why. I just thought it was fascinating. So in 2015, a book came out written by Jeff Shepard, who became my collaborator. I'm jumping the story. I bought the book and it laid on my bookshelf for a year and a half. And I finally read the thing. And when I read it, basically Jeff was a young lawyer in the Nixon White House and ran the documents room. And a lot of things ran through him. And for the past 45 years, he's been requisitioning the National Archives for certain documents. And lo and behold, he found out that there was dastardly deeds done by the prosecution, the judges involved. There was prosecutorial misconduct. Imagine that.
Right. Imagine that. That doesn't go on.
So, So but we won't get political this early in the show.
No, we don't have to.
Okay.
I wasn't. I was looking at this more as a creative enterprise rather than a political enterprise, and I was really completely taken back on how well and the strength of the play. I loved it. I just simply loved what you were able to do. Go ahead. And what I did was, so that I was, so that I wasn't giving you bad advice, I even suggested you go to what they call a script doctor to make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, to make sure that, you know, you weren't making any mistakes, because I write nonfiction. Fiction or being a playwright, I am not, and I didn't want to give you bad advice. Go ahead.
No, well, if I could go back for a moment, I called you with the concept. When I read the book, I thought this would make a great play. Basically,
yes,
to give Nixon the trial he never had.
Yes, I love
and
it.
I called you and I said, John, what do you think of this? This is the concept. And you said, I love it. And you gave me some further advice. And then you gave me the title of the play. You said, it's called Trial on the Potomac. and I still am making payments on that to you. I know I have.
Yeah, right. I know. I know the last check is in the mail.
That's right. But you gave me you said it can be done. He can be rebranded. It would take it. I mean, you told me the details of it. It wasn't just a flip.
Sure.
And so I started writing. At first, I got a script doctor because I was very unsure of myself. Unlike now, right?
You're fine.
No, I still struggle with it, but I write.
Well, that's artists. That's what every artist goes through. We need that reinforcement. As a psychologist, I know that. So,
well, we were very honored to have, and this is through the efforts of Jeff Shepard, because he started a legacy series at the Nixon Foundation in Yorba Linda, California. And the foundation was very gracious. I submitted the script, and they hosted the first reading, which you came to.
Yes, I did. What a weekend that was. Wow. That was really, really good.
The very next day, we went to Whittier College, where Nixon went to school, and they hosted a reading for us as well. And recently, well, it was right before this horrible fortune befell us.
Mm-hmm.
On February 27th, Lorraine Hunt, the owner of the Bootlegger, very graciously gave me her venue for 3 days. And we had rehearsals and a reading with Rich Little as the president, President Richard Nixon, which was really spectacular. We've had, of course, everything is shuttered down now, which has given me the opportunity to write and rewrite and tool and retool. And so, it's coming along, but thank you. That's the story of my little Richard Nixon play.
Yeah. And I mean, Rich Little does such a great job as well. I mean, he used to be spot on when he used to do Richard Nixon on the Tonight Show. And and one of my real dreams was to meet him. And not only did I meet him, if I could be so bold, we're now friends, and that is just really wonderful. All because of you.
Do you have his book? See, that's Rich Little's book, right?
I do not have Rich Little's book.
Yeah,
I will. I've been a little bit.
Look at that, to George.
Oh, I love it.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
And I got another book here that great guy, but he just won't sign it to me. There's a book here.
Don't start. Don't you start.
People buy brands. You know this.
Yeah. You really are an apple polisher.
Oh,
you know that.
Look at this. No dedication.
You're listening to George Bugatti, John Tantillo, BrandTalkk, another way to talk. And we're on every Friday at 3:00. And tell your friends. It's a great listen. And let's talk a little bit. I mean, you are your brand. If I were to, what comes to mind? We call them branding position. What comes to mind is you're a musician, you're a pianist, and you also interpret the contemporary songbook. But yeah, I mean, you wrote this wonderful play about Harold Arlen, one of my, and KT Sullivan did a show about Harold Arlen. And that's how I got to know Harold Arlen. And for our listeners that don't know who Harold Arlen is, he wrote the music for The Wizard of Oz, my favorite movie. The only movie that comes before Wizard of Oz is The Godfather, and for different reasons why I love The Wizard of Oz. But you did a whole how would you say, how would you it's music and the story of Harold Arlen being a son of a cantor and all of that. And there's so many interesting facts about Harold Arlen. Like, for example, he didn't want to have a publicist because he didn't think he needed one. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that show that you did.
Thank you, John. Yeah, well, I had a lot of help from Sam Arlen, who was the composer's son. I met him while I was pushing something in New York. It might have been a CD, and we had the same publicist, ironically. And we met sitting on the couch together in the waiting room of Miller Wright's office in New York. And I think KT might have known
sure
Miller. And I had a concept for a show that I was working on, but it was called The Three Crooners. I'd read an article in the New York Times saying that there's money in the number three. And it went on to describe the three tenors, the three motenors, the three mezzo-sopranos, the three musketeers, And so I thought, wow, what about the three crooners? And he was looking for a novel way to promote his father's music, because unlike George Gershwin, Cole Porter, Richard Rodgers, his father's name, other than inside the industry, wasn't a household name.
Right.
Of what you opened up the segment with, not carrying a publicist and being a very shy, reserved, retiring fellow. And so we got together and we worked on a show. It debuted at the Ford Amphitheater in Los Angeles in 2006. And we eventually did dozens and dozens of shows, performing arts centers around the country. In 2013, we sat down at one theater in New York for a year and a half, the St. Luke's Theater over on 46th and 8th Avenue. And it was a dream come true, because I got to marry a lot of my passions. I was in the show in the beginning as one of the crooners. And I got to arrange some of the songs. I got to play piano and accompany myself in the show on 2 or 3 tunes. And I got to write the dialogue and work with the wonderful Harold Arlen estate. I mean, if somebody 50 years ago, 40 years ago would have said to me, project into the future, you could work with the Wizard of Oz composers estate and do all this thing, travel around the country, would you shave off 5 years off of your life? I'd say, where do I sign? So
wow,
it's very, very fortunate. Harold Arlen, for those who don't know, also wrote so many great songs that Sinatra recorded. World on a String, One for My Baby. Paper Moon, and all the great singers have recorded his tunes. So it was pretty spectacular. We had a nice 14, 15-year run with that show.
Yeah, yeah. And then you fast forward, you come into New York City. You're doing some business with all the projects that you're involved with, and you say, "Look, I I got invited to an off-Broadway show," and you say, "Would you come with me?" And for those of you who know me, I got ADD. I mean, I don't like sitting any longer than 15 minutes in any one location. I mean, to see a show, it takes a lot out of me. But anyway, you convinced me to see a show in which I meet this character that is now another friend of mine that has become a dear friend, Michael Guccione, who is a producer of the show, and you got involved because you were in the show as the singer. Go ahead, talk about that.
Michael's wonderful. Hey, Michael, I hope you're out there.
Yeah, Mike. This guy, he's another one. The geniuses that say, I've been bringing this up. There's one guy, an Italian guy. I won't mention his name. He said to me, after 50, I'm making any more friends. I can't even count how many friends I have made, and dear friends, you included, Gooch as well. Okay. It's incredible, but go ahead. I said too much. I get so excited about your life. My life, not so much. Go ahead.
I get excited too. You know, I was very honored. Kathleen Johnson had written this play that was, I think, many years in the making, and she's a Tony Award winning playwright, director, producer.
And she's a friend as well, by the way. Let's not forget that. Go ahead.
And Michael was producing, and he's produced. He's got a list of productions. I wish I had him in front of me that I could rattle off. Sorry, Mike, but he's solidly in there, and he's known in the industry, and he's been very helpful since then. It wasn't just one of these things where I worked for the production and then it was goodbye. We've become friends.
Sure.
And I was going to hear, this was playing. What's the name of the theater? Help us, Mike. Are you out there?
I don't know. And forget about me. I'm mush.
The Soho Playhouse, I think it was.
Yeah, very good. Yes, it was the Soho Playhouse. You're absolutely right.
And we went down there, and I said, look, I'm going to come to New York. I want to do a couple of things, and I'm going to go see the show, see the play. And just brilliantly written, you know.
What were you in it? This is so cute. Why did they choose you?
They're still trying to figure that out. I had somebody that I knew at the Bootlegger recommended me, and we recorded it here in Las Vegas. And they, I guess they liked what I was doing, and that's how we met. You know, I hadn't known them previously. It was through a sort of a mutual friend, and that's how that went along.
Yeah. And but you actually sang a song in it.
I'm sorry. That's right. I recorded a tune that they publish, I believe, and it was a marvelous sounding Broadway tune. In the beginning, I didn't realize that they wanted it. That one of the reasons they liked me was because of my crooning sensibilities. And the song was so well written as a Broadway style piece. I went in the studio and I started singing as a Broadway song. And then they called me in, and they said, well, can you give it a little bit of a different treatment? And they both have clearly, with their experience in the game, They knew what they wanted, and they shared that with me, and I tried my best to do that. So it was a song that appeared in a scene in the play.
Yes, yes. Well, and by the way, I was able to sit through the whole, which is a testament to how well it was written. God bless the writer, Miss Johnson there, Kathleen Johnson.
By the way, fiercely independent.
Fiercely independent. Yes.
Is the
yes. Yeah. Wow.
I hope we see that again somewhere. I know
and then,
sorry.
Yeah. No.
Some other productions currently that have been sidetracked because of the pandemic crisis. But I love that. I hope to do some other things with that as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And was it before? I think we met him either before the show or after the show at this great restaurant. I mean, it was like right across the street from the theater. And you know me in restaurants, and everybody was young, and it was a wonderful, and that's where really we all bonded, because you really didn't know Gooch that well. You met him once or twice at that point, right? Or am I making a mistake here? Go ahead.
Not this time.
You're good. You're good. You're good.
No, I had known him professionally.
Okay, so
we hung out at all, and it was at that point that we really started developing our friendship, as did you. You know.
Yes. Yeah. You're listening to George Bugatti, John Tantillo, BrandTalkk, another way to talk. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the world. Let's get in trouble. What the heck is going on in Las Vegas? Is it open yet?
Well, I don't know what's in store for me tonight. I know last week when Lorraine asked me to play, she said there's a distinction between entertaining and playing. She asked because there's gaming involved. You know, she has a wonderful setup, which is unique. She has a stage and a grand piano, and then there's gaming on one side and a restaurant, and it's quite a unique, wonderful place. And she said, but just keep it low key. Let's not entertain. Let's not perform. Now, officially, more restrictions have been lifted today, and so when I go in tonight, we'll see what the play is going to be, what the story will be. But things are moving along okay. Here, I know that unfortunately our big performing arts center is shut down indefinitely. I don't know how theaters are going to reopen. I talked with the owner of the St. Luke's Theater, Ed Gaines, who you've met,
sure,
in New York, and my lawyer, who in New York, who's the president of the Off-Broadway Association, Peter Brager, and Off-Broadway League. I'm not sure what the actual name is, but and no one really knows how they're going to move forward in putting people in theaters. So I know we're bringing it down a little bit, but it's important. It's something that's going on right now, and I don't know what the way back is. You know, I don't. We just sit and wait.
What do you mean you don't know? You should know. I mean, our politicians certainly know, right?
Oh yeah, of course
they know everything.
They know everything.
I call them Kias, know-it-alls.
Are we, John? We're going there. I feel it. You're dragging me in.
I'm sorry. Every time I want to get out, they bring me back in.
Right. No, it's very scary for performers. You know, here in this town, we have such a variety of entertainment and big production shows. You know, the Cirque shows and the musicals. They're shuttered. There's a lot of people out of work. A lot of people out of work, and unfortunately, when I say we, the powers that be here in this state have been, for whatever reason, I'm sure their plates are full, but we're the last one to be able to see, for those performers to see any remuneration. I think I can speak for all the wonderful entertainers here. I think most of them have not received anything in terms of, the government support and
Sure.
the pandemic support and those programs that have been put in place. From everyone that I've talked to, even as late as today, some people that I know haven't received anything, and now we're at the end of May.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know this, but our mutual friend Bertie Fershram, he started a virtual cabaret website where entertainers can monetize them going on and entertaining online, which I think is brilliant. And I'm going to reach out to him after the show and see if he needs any help. Not that I'm going to be a paid consultant, but any way I could help, bring him on BrandTalk, where we can talk a little bit about this. But that's one creative way. Have you thought about that? Monetizing on the web. Go ahead.
I've heard about it. It's not something that appeals specifically to me because I'm a live performer.
Got it.
And when I've done recordings, when I've done CDs, that's still, even though that's going on wax, as they say.
Yes.
Still, I don't know. It's a different animal. I think, and it's always been a challenge for me. Recording CDs have always been a challenge for me for that very reason. Barbra Streisand would, because she's also a performer, a live performer, would always have someone in the studio, at least that called a giver, somebody that she could give the song to.
I love it.
And I had that as well. It worked for me. When I first started doing concerts, the very first time I did a theater, a real performing arts center, it scared the hell out of me. I had no experience, and my agent was able to get me the gig. And I went on stage, and it was different than appearing in a club. When I walked out on stage, I had these huge bright lights. The spotlights are hitting me. It looked like F-16 fighters bearing down on me.
Right.
I couldn't see the audience. So I had to imagine that they were there and give it to them. It wasn't only after that I got some good advice from someone that said, just tell the lighting guy to light up the first 2 rows of the audience very gently so you can see them and that somebody's there.
I love it.
And I don't want to name drop, but if you ask me, I will. Who gave that advice to me?
Go ahead. Who gave it to you?
Tony Bennett.
That was the next round of questions. Did you sing with Tony Bennett, or give us that Tony Bennett story, which is really only Bugatti.
Well, this speaks really about him, because no one does it anymore. They're just so, wrapped up in who they are. And I speak generally, of course. I'm sure there are people who would do it and who maybe have done it. I'm just not aware of it. But he invited me to one of his shows at the Thousand Oaks Civic Hall.
Could you imagine? Oh, I wouldn't have known what to do.
Show, just to see the show. And I got there, and there were 2 tickets for me, front row center. I mean, literally front row. I was sitting here, and the stage was here. And halfway through the show, he looked down and he said, "I want to introduce you to somebody. George, why don't you come on up here?" And I had no idea. And he said, "Here's my microphone. Here's my band. Show the people what you can do." And I did 3 songs that night.
Wow.
With him.
Wow. My God. God.
He was very helpful. He's the one who said to me, that was before that, because I'd known him for a couple of years prior to that happening. And he's the one who said, light the audience gently. So going back, wrapping up the thought about the concept of doing something for a web thing, I can absolutely see the value in it. There's some interaction here with you, so this is fun.
Right.
There's something happening, but to just I mean, I could do it for a song or 2, I guess. Okay.
Well,
for me, I don't feel that.
Okay, here's a suggestion.
Yeah.
If I were you, I would use Zoom and use the Zoom feature where you could see everybody who's online at the time. It would look like the Brady Bunch. So it would be you and all of these people, and you could literally sing to the boxes. So there would be, you would need to see a producer like Tantillo and of course Julian to help you along with that. But that's that would be one way of calming that neurosis down.
Admittedly, it's a fear of something unknown.
Yeah.
Done anything like that before. I'm not quite sure how it would happen. And now
you try it.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, that's what a lot of guys my age, not so much your age, but a lot of guys my age and gals don't want to try new things. You've got to do it. Like social media. I'm 68, soon to be 69, and I'm teaching a class in social media. And how my advantage is not knowing the tactics as much as knowing the strategy. That's the secret. What is it that you want to accomplish? And in the same way, there you go. Now I'm going to ask something completely off script here, and you might want to kill me. Did you ever meet Frank Sinatra?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I love this. See, I got to know Sinatra really secondhand through Willie Rizzo, Jilly's son, but I really never. And of course, my parents loved. My mother loved him. My father loved him. But I really, Willie Rizzo is my whole connection to Sinatra. So I meet all of these people, but I'm stepping on your Sinatra story. Go ahead.
No, you're setting it up for me. Thank you, John. I haven't thought of this in a long time. I was lucky enough to land there's a place in Beverly Hills called the Peninsula Hotel.
Sure.
And the Peninsula is just a wonderful spot. And I was lucky enough to get a position of sort of like a Bobby Short kind of gig at the equivalent of the Carlisle in New York. Well, I was I had a health court there singing and playing for about 7 years.
Bobby Short. Now cut that out. Bobby Short. I'm going to harm you. I used to see him when I used to jog up First Avenue. We used to have two huge dogs bigger than him that used to walk him. I'm sorry. I had to get that out.
No, I love that. So one night, it's literally, I think I played till 1 o'clock in the morning. It's about 1:15, and who walks in? But the place was quiet.
Right.
And who walks in was Sinatra, and I think Tim Conway was there, and Elliot Weissman, his lawyer.
Oh, yeah, sure.
One other person. And they sit in the back. And a couple of minutes later, the server comes up to me and said, they're asking if you can move, because I'm at a grand piano. If you could move the grand piano to the back of the room.
Oh my God.
So maybe they didn't realize it was a grand. Maybe they thought it was a cube. I don't know. I went over to the table and I said, Mrs. Sinatra, I said, if there's anybody in the world I'd move it for, it'd be you, but it's a grand piano. I said, we can't move it. I said, but there are a lot of seats up front. So they get their drinks, and maybe 5-10 minutes later, they come up front.
I love it.
They sit at the front seat right there. And a few minutes after that, these are the days when you could still smoke in Los Angeles. So
right.
This is in the 90s sometime, right?
Yeah.
And he comes to the piano, and he has literally the Jack Daniels in one hand and the cigarette in the other. And he says, but not for me, E flat. So I start to play it, and he sings.
Oh.
So that's my experience with, halfway through the song, he says, sing along, kid.
Oh. Now, how old were you when this happened? You in your 20s? Are you in your 30s?
Well, let's see. I'm
40s?
I'm 53 now, so
I'll cut that out.
we're going back to 91, 92, 93.
All right.
So this is how many years ago? 25 years ago, maybe something like that.
You're in your 20s. That's what I thought. Yeah.
20s or 30s, you know,
Yeah.
late 20s. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, I mean, I wish I would have met Sinatra, but in another way, meeting these heroes, uh, you know, because Sinatra was a lot like my uncles and my cousins, the stories that I hear. So that if you maybe said a stupid thing, they gave you the faccia, the faccia brutta. They would give you the face of death. Okay. So I don't know whether or not it would have been a good encounter or not, but I still would have loved to have met him because as an artist, there's just nobody like him. So what would you say is your brand? If you were going to describe yourself, what would you say as a performer you are? Are you a pianist? Are you an interpreter of the American songbook? What is it that you do?
Yeah, I'm an interpreter.
You're an interpreter. Yeah.
I accompany myself. I enjoy that. That's what I enjoy the most.
And who would you? Yeah. And who would you say is your favorite musical artist?
Oh my
Tough
God.
one, huh?
Tough one. There are so many. But from an artistic point of view, the songwriters are the ones that really float my boat. So even though it's been incredible to meet a Sinatra and meet Tony Bennett and work with him, it's really the songwriters that really send the chills up my spine.
Yeah.
Producers, people who, I mentioned a second ago that I really love singing and playing. Well, I think I equally love producing. I love producing.
I love it. Yes.
And seeing the whole thing and bringing it together. That's a joy. Yeah. That's a joy. I love the collaborative effort. I love the process because what I may think of in my mind's eye is limited. It's limited by my experiences and what I've studied and read. And then when you bring other people into the fold and you start to go, wow, I didn't think of that. And you go another way. And you end up in a similar place. You get it done, but you may not have taken the road that you envisioned to get there. Yeah. And that's a joy. I love that.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite, I think my favorite is Cole Porter. And I loved I've Got You Under My Skin, and I love Sinatra's interpretation. And I don't know if anyone knows the original way it was sung by Cole Porter, but it went something like this before Nelson Riddle made it the song that I love. It went, I've got you under my skin. I mean, it was really a nothing song. And I shouldn't say that, but you know where I'm going. It's Sinatra, and I should say Nelson Riddle, who transformed that and made it such a Sinatra song. Absolutely. I like it. Go ahead.
Absolutely. If I may, another example is the Bart Howard tune, the famous Bart Howard tune, Fly Me to the Moon.
Fly Me to the Moon, yeah.
And when the original recordings of it was Fly Me to the Moon.
Right.
And it was a ballad. And
it was a ballad. Yeah. Well, you know that we only have another 50 seconds. And in this 50 seconds, why don't you let our listeners know where they can get a hold of you? You have a website.
Thank you. The play website is trialonthepotomac.com. Trialonthepotomac.com. And you can go on there and see Rich Little as President Nixon with some wonderful deep fake technology, artificial intelligence that we've applied to him. So it's really marvelous. A lot of fun. My website is georgebugatti.com.
Okay, that sounds great. And we'll have all of that on the website. And I just want to thank you so much, George, for a wonderful interview. And this is Dr. John Tantillo reminding you to speak or brand talk, another way to talk. See you next week. Thank you, George.